You have built your AI feature, it works on your device, and now you need to ship it to millions of users, and suddenly you are dealing with API key security, prompt leaking, and cost blowouts. I'm Miguel Ramos, Product Manager for Firebase AI Logic, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to skip all this headache and ship AI features with confidence. If you haven't used Firebase AI Logic before, here's a quick overview. It's a managed service that gives you mobile and web apps a direct, secure bridge to Gemini. No backend middleware required to keep your API key secure. 3 lines of code, and you are calling Gemini from the client. Your Kotlin stays Kotlin. Your Swift stays Swift. Your Dart stays Dart, and so on. Calling a model is the easy part. The hard part is everything else. How do I protect my prompts? How do I stop abuse? How I can manage which users have access to my feature? How do I know what's happening in production? How do I keep tabs on cost? Firebase AI Logic helps you to stay on top of all of that. Let me show you what's new. Let's start with the feature I'm most excited about, server prompt templates and the brand new capability called template mode. Here's the problem. When you hardcode a prompt in your client app, that prompt is exposed. Somebody can decompile your app and inspect network traffic and extract the entire prompt. That's your intellectual property sitting on the open. Server prompt templates solve this. Instead of putting the prompt in your app, you store it in the Firebase server as a template. Your app references your template using a template ID. You define and pass the input variables the template requires. The server validates the input variables, fills in the blanks, composes the final prompt, and executes the call. Here's the client code. One call with a template ID and a map of variable. That's it. Your prompt never leaves the server. Here, in the Firebase console, you can see the template syntax, the model, the system instruction, the input and output schema. You can set validations and regular expression patterns of every input variable so the client can only send what is expected. If you need to tweak the system instruction or swap the model from Gemini Flash to Gemini Pro, all you need to do is edit the template right here in the console. It goes live instantly from every user. No store update, no redeployment. Now, here's what's new, template mode. With a single toggle in the Firebase console, you are telling Firebase AI Logic that every Gemini call from my client must be called through a server prompt template. Block everything else. Think about what that means. Your client app literally cannot send any free-form prompt to the model. It can only fill in the variables you define with the validation rule you've set. If someone tries to call the API without a template ID, the request is rejected. This is a strong prompt injection defense you can deploy in a client-side architecture. You decide exactly what the model sees. The client just supplies data. Now, a common question I get. This is great, but what if I need custom business logic between my app and the model? What if I need to check something before the request goes through? Like, for example, only allow my premium users to use certain AI features. That's why we added Cloud Function triggers for Firebase AI Logic. So you can now write Cloud Functions that triggers before or after a generate content. For example, before the model calls, you might verify user subscription tier. Check their tokens balance or strip specific keyword from the input. After the call, you might filter the response or log into your own analytics. Here's an example. This before generate content function is fired every time a client makes a request. I've got full access to the auth context, so I can check who the user is, query my database for the subscription tier. If they hit the free tier limit, I throw an error and the request is blocked before it ever reaches Gemini. That saves me API costs and informs my business rules. The key point, this is pure serverless logic. You're not building a backend proxy, you are not managing infrastructure, you are writing one function that hooks into the pipeline exactly where you need it. Deploying cloud function is a lot easier than setting up and managing a bucket. And it works seamlessly with other features such as server prompt templates, templates mode, and of course, AppCheck. Speaking of which, let's step back and look at the full security picture. First of all, Firebase AI Logic never exposes your Gemini API key to the client device. Your API key lives on the server managed by Google hosted in our secure data centers. The client authenticates with Firebase Auth to tell your app who the user is. AppCheck validates that the request is coming from a real and tampered app. For the most secure conscious apps, you can enable replay attack protection. This ensures that the tokens can only be used exactly once. Then, you have server prompt templates for reducing prompt injections, and template mode, which constrain what the client can send. Finally, you have cloud triggers that let you insert your own business rules, rate limits, keyword filtering, subscription checks, custom guardrails directly into the pipeline. That's 4 layers of defense, and you don't have to build any of the infrastructure behind them. We, the Firebase team, did all the hard work. Security is half the story. You also need to know what's happening. AI monitoring gives you full observability for every Gemini call right in the Firebase console. Traces, latency, token count, error rates. If you are using server prompt templates, you can see the exact composed prompt that was sent to the model. When a user reports a weird response, you don't guess. You pull out the trace and see the inputs and the composed prompt, the output, and the tokens. That's your debugging story. And speaking of token and cost, we must talk about explicit context caching. If you are sending the same large context with every request, for example, a policy document or a product catalog, you are paying to process those input tokens over and over. Explicit context caching lets you upload the context once, set the expiration time, and reference by cache in your server prompt template. The model only processes the user prompt. Your input token cost can drop significantly and your response gets faster. And this works hand in hand with templates. The cache reference lives in the template, so your client code doesn't change at all. Alright, that's production readiness. Secure prompts, defense in depth, custom logic, full observability, and cost control. Now, let me hand it over to Rosario, who is going to show you how to run AI where it matters most, on the device.
Thanks, Miguel. Hi, I'm Rosario Fernandez, Developer Relations Engineer on the Firebase team. Everything Miguel showed you is done using models hosted in the cloud. But what if you could run some of those AI features using a model that is already in the user's device? This would offer users faster response times and better privacy because the data never leaves the phone or browser. plus zero API costs for you, the developer. That's exactly what the hybrid inference in AI Logic is for. If the device can perform inference using an unknown device model, run it locally. Otherwise, fall back to the cloud. Today, hybrid inference works across 3 platforms: Android, Chrome on desktop, and, this is new, Apple platforms through the Foundation Models framework. Let me show you each one of them. Let's start with Android. You set the inference mode to Prefer on-device. Under the hood, the SDK checks if the device supports Gemini Nano. If it does, inference runs locally. If it doesn't, it falls back to the Gemini model in the cloud that was specified there. As you can see, it's only a few lines of code and no conditional logic you have to maintain. The pattern repeats on the web. The SDK uses the W3C prompt API to access Gemini Nano directly in Chrome on desktop. In other browsers, the request will go straight to the cloud. And here's the new one. On iOS 26, Apple introduced Foundation Models, their framework for running AI locally on Apple devices. We've integrated this directly into Firebase AI Logic SDK for Swift. Note that Apple foundational models are only supported in the most modern Apple devices. By using AI Logic, you ensure that even if your users have an older device, your AI features will still work by automatically falling back to the cloud. Although we use the inference mode Prefer on device in all the previous examples, there are 3 other inference modes that you can use. Prefer in cloud, which tries to use the cloud-hosted model and falls back to on-device. Only on-device, which uses the on-device model if it's available or throws an exception otherwise. Or only in cloud, tries to use the cloud-hosted model or throws an exception if unavailable. Note that hybrid inference is in preview across all 3 platforms. Not every device supports on-device inference today, but the hardware base is growing and the cost savings plus privacy improvements are pretty compelling. Every request that runs on device is a request you don't pay for and stays on the user's device. Think of it as a long-term optimization strategy. By writing the logic now, you're building an app that gets cheaper and faster as the hardware catches up. So let's recap. In this video, we showed you how you can use server prompt templates and template mode for securing and managing your prompts. We demonstrated how AI Logic triggered cloud functions allow you to augment calls with your own custom business logic. Of course, security is a crucial feature for all apps, even more so for AI features. Firebase AI Logic provides defense in-depth security you don't have to build yourself. Once you go to production, you can use AI monitoring for observability and context caching for cost control. And finally, hybrid inference allows you to run AI workloads on devices across Android, Chrome, and now Apple platforms. All of this is available in the Firebase AI Logic SDKs today. If you're new to AI Logic, the Getting Started guide will have you making your first Gemini call in just a few minutes. If you're already building with AI Logic, go to the Firebase console and check out all of these latest features.
Remember, you can share your feedback via Firebase User Voice Forum, linked in the description. Your feedback is important for us and it directly shapes our roadmap. Now go out there and build something great.